I did a lot of research on intergenerational transmission of trauma. How does our ancestors and our grandparents and our parents' experiences in life pass to us, and how does it impact us? Because I needed to understand myself, but I also wanted to help other people understand the context of their trauma might be greater than their own experience. It could be because their grandparents or even great-grandparents had experienced something that is showing up in our life today. It's not always about us, it might be what's passing through us. So I wanted to better understand that as a psychologist, but for myself. And what I learned is that when traumas or experiences are not shared, if your grandparents went through war but didn't talk about it, the second and third generation will have more depression, anxiety, and PTSD symptoms.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jay Scherr, host of Business Minds Coffee Chat, where you get a captivating look inside the minds of game changers, risk takers, and visionaries who turn ideas into breakthroughs that shake up the world. Our mission is to give you fresh ways to think that spark growth in your business and life so you can make a mark that lasts. Is there anything that you would add that you think is relevant to your background that would give us some additional context that we should understand at this point?
Yeah, well, I think some of the most important pieces is I spend a lot of my work focused almost extensively or exclusively almost on first responders and special operations combat veterans and those in the intelligence community. I, of course, work with community members. My ketamine practice is full of community members, and the Buddhist groups I lead are, of course, full of regular folk. But a lot of my work is focused on police officers, firefighters, wildland firefighters, and special operations veterans. So that's been a big part of what my service in the world for at least the last 10 years.
Excellent. So I want to explore that a bit more deeply here shortly. And just as a point of reference, so my son is a police officer. And so from the firsthand experience of a father of a police officer and hearing about the experiences that he goes through, I definitely have concerns in my own heart and things that, quite frankly, Michael, I don't share just out of concern, or perhaps maybe not knowing the right way to bring certain conversations up. But we'll talk a little bit more about the work that you do and why that is so important. But I did want to ask you, though, before I kind of go backwards in time here, you mentioned that you've been doing this work with first responders for 10 years. Was that when you first moved into this line of work, was that were those the types of individuals that you started working with, or you ended up transitioning to the first responder community primarily?
Yeah, so I've actually only worked with first responders for about 5 years, but for 10 full years, I worked with combat veterans. So I started off a lot of my training as a psychologist working at different VAs and working in the combat veteran community as a psychologist. And strange enough, I was invited to do psychedelic retreats for combat veterans out of country for a variety of organizations who sought me out because of my skill set with psychedelic psychotherapy and my skill set with combat veterans. So I was doing that piece for about 10 years. Before that, I was actually interested in working with people in prison, and I had done some of that work. And before that, I worked with about 8 years with children in the community in foster care systems, underserved, low-resourced kids. I work with them around the country and actually in Asia as well. So I had a variety of populations I've been working with for the last, I don't know, almost 30 years now. And the last 5 strong years have been with first responders in the department, out in the field on calls, and then as a psychotherapist in the office.
Wow, amazing. So I'd like to go back in time a bit if we can. I'd like to explore a bit of your early years. So I understand in doing my research that your mother is a therapist or a psychologist. Do I have that correct?
Yes, she's a neuropsychologist, so less therapy and more evaluations. And
More evaluations.
yeah,
Okay.
she'd worked with Department of Corrections at times, doing evaluations on sex offenders going to court. She's worked with veterans, doing evaluations for comp and pen compensation and the what they get after they leave the military if they get service oriented connections. So yes, she's a psychologist as well.
Okay, so how did that, or maybe it didn't, but how did that perhaps influence the direction that you ultimately went with your career? So, growing up in a
Yeah.
household of that nature, tell me a little bit more about that experience.
I'll be pretty vulnerable, and I try to be vulnerable as a way of being, but also as a
Hmm.
model for other people.
Hmm.
Uh, it's less her being a psychologist and more that my family were Holocaust survivors. My grandmother was in Auschwitz at the very end of the war, and my grandfather was a Russian prisoner of war.
Wow.
And that had an obvious, immense impact on my family. So they survived. My mother was born. And in 1956, the Hungarian Revolution happened and they had to flee the Russians. And so at 7 years old, my mom was a war refugee. And they spent quite a lot of time in the refugee camp before they came to the States. And so that had a huge impact on my understanding of human suffering and the
Hmm.
capability to do harm and the potential of resiliency, tenacity, and strength. So, I saw very clearly the impact of extensive trauma, extensive war trauma on the family and on me personally. And it was
Right.
very difficult to navigate. So I ended up doing a lot of drugs early on because it was so chaotic. It's so emotionally dysregulating that I had to find something. And that was it's strange enough. I started psychedelics at 15 to explore myself and the cosmos. I mean, who knew? I didn't use those language. I didn't use that language, of course, but
Right.
some of it might have been escape, but I was also very intrigued by the mystery of life and doing psychedelics that early, which I don't recommend to anybody listening, did change my perception on what it means to be alive and connect to the greater universe. And so all of those things have really influenced who I am today and the work I'm doing and why I'm doing what I'm doing.
So, well, first, thank you for sharing that. So, at the time that 15 years old, you start using psychedelics, were you living at home with your parents at this point?
The parents were separated, but I lived with my
Okay.
mom, and
Okay.
oh yeah, it
Eh,
was a fairly stable, household. We had what we needed for the most part. I just wanted to explore. I wanted something else that I was not getting.
yeah.
Hmm.
So, with the family, the familial background, and your grandparents being survivors, and what your mother had gone through as well, and then obviously the impact that had on you, were you were you discussing these feelings and what you were experiencing yourself with your mother? And did she understand? Was she able to help and guide you, or was anyone else helping to guide you through those feelings as well? And then, kind of a two-part question: when you did get into the psychedelics, was that something that you were discussing with your mother as well? I'm just trying to wrap my head around what that
Yeah.
experience was like at that age.
Well, I'll tell you that when I was in my doctoral program, somewhere in my 30s, I did a lot of research on intergenerational transmission of trauma. How does
Hmm.
our ancestors and our grandparents and our parents' experiences in life pass to us? And how does it impact us? Um, because I needed to understand myself, but I also wanted to help other people understand the context of their trauma might be greater than their own experience. It could be because their grandparents or even great grandparents had experienced something that is showing up in our life today. It's not always about us. It might be what's passing through us. So I wanted to better understand that as a psychologist, but for myself. And what I learned is that when traumas or experiences are not shared, if your grandparents went through war but didn't talk about it, the second and third generation will have more depression, anxiety, and PTSD symptoms. And I tell this to my combat vets all the time, and even my first responders. For the grandparents or people who have the experience, when they do share with their grandchildren and their children, there's less depression, less anxiety. There's more resiliency and strength in the personality, because the kids and the grandkids have context for why their grandparents are like that. They know, wow, you've been through something. You must be super, even if I don't quite like you, you've been through something and you're strong. And maybe I have that strength. My family didn't, at least on my side, my mom, we did not share those stories. I didn't know about my grandmother's Auschwitz story till I was in my 30s. So growing up, I knew they were there, but I didn't know details. I didn't know what happened. I didn't know how strong they were to survive something like that. I just saw some pretty bad temperament and anger and dysregulation, which I didn't understand from my mom and my grandmother. And it definitely was not okay for me. It definitely messed me up in certain ways. So I wish I would have known earlier. I wish, and what I'm sharing this for is for whoever's listening, that sharing your story is powerful medicine. It is powerful medicine to share not all the nitty-gritty details, but to share what you've been through empowers us. It gives us confidence. It gives context. So I do encourage my first responders, and actually anybody who's been through trauma, to start sharing their story. So that's one lesson I took out of my own experiences.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. Now, as you were talking about the kind of the generational trauma, or those that's passed down through the generation, does that fall under epigenetics? Is that
Sure, partly, yes.
partly what that is? Okay.
Epigenetics are changes in DNA, essentially unactivated DNA turns on when you have an experience. We all have genes that are not active, and then a certain experience will turn them on. Then it encodes and passes down through generations. So epigenetics is the passing down of information of an experience through generations. So we all have that at all times. Our grandparents have always influenced us through the gene activation, through their experiences and their responses to their experiences passed down through mom and dad to us. But then there's also parenting behavior that's not genetic. It's what kids see. It's what's modeled. It's what happens in the home, where kids are watching and picking up and going, oh, that's how dad acts when, like, if you're angry, that's how you're supposed to act when you're angry. So now we're adults acting like our dad when we don't want to, but it was modeled and we pick it up and mirror it. So there's genes, there's nature, and there's nurture, kind of both. It's all at the same time. You can't pull it apart. So there's that. And then there's explicit teaching. Our parents or caregivers will explicitly teach us their beliefs. Racism is passed down that way often. We don't like that group of people. We don't like this group of people. And the kid goes, oh, I'm not supposed to like this group of people. I'm not supposed to like that group of people. That's explicit teaching of beliefs, not that goes along with modeling. So there's a lot of ways that we are kind of programmed and conditioned to be who we are right now. And my job is helping people recognize, do those things still work for you or not work for you? Are those aligned with your own heart's values? Or do you want to do something different that's based on you, not on your family or your culture or your genes or the teaching in the history?
Well, no wonder we can be a hot mess often.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so I really want to also explore that peeling back, right? Getting deeper, getting through those layers, the biases and those, all of the things that we've been taught and the examples. And of course today with social media reinforcing
Yeah.
those beliefs or those things that really aren't necessarily rooted in truth. It just is what we are being exposed to. And it creates a storyline and a pattern that's very difficult to interrupt and break. But obviously you have the tools and the knowledge and skill set to be able to help with that. So let's start on the topic of psychedelics. So you started to experiment with them at 15. And of course, you said that you wouldn't recommend that people do that. But can you give us a sense of what type of psychedelics you were experimenting with or using at that stage?
And I think before we do that, for your
Okay.
listeners to know that I'm not always pro 100% psychedelics. Yes, I wrote a book. Yes, I'm doing a lot of work in the field in
Hmm.
retreats and individual sessions at the ketamine clinic, but I don't believe it's the end all. And I also don't believe everybody should use them. I don't think they're right for everybody. And they're still illegal. And we don't want to promote things that are illegal. So there's a lot of complexity here, even though I respect the medicines and I use them therapeutically. I no longer use them myself.
Hmm.
That is I'm good. I learned what I needed to. I'm happy with what I've got, and I actually like sobriety the most of all the states I've ever been in, and it took a long time to get here. So I just wanted all those disclaimers out there that I'm not 100% pro, everyone should try it, because that is not true. And it could be dangerous and unethical and unsafe for some people to do those. So,
Thank you for that.
yeah, it's important I put that out there when I'm speaking to a larger audience. I started because I was offered it by older students, and I was being brought into kind of a tribe of older students who were adventurous and I looked up to and I trusted. And so I tried LSD, I tried mushrooms. Those were the two ones that I used a lot during high school and into college. They were extraordinary for showing different realities, different perspectives on yourself, on the world. They can be very disorienting, very dysregulating, can be very scary if you don't have the right support or people around you. And some people, I mean, and I was lucky enough to have a very strong mind where I actually took LSD 2 times during high school, during the day, and was able to navigate all my classes while on acid.
Wow.
Yeah, really interesting experiences. I was just like, hold it together, dude. Hold it together.
Mm,
Do this.
mm.
And still function as a student. I remember going to McDonald's where I worked and having to like greet customers and press the buttons that were all jumping out at me, going, just keep your shit together, dude. Um, it, but honestly, that gave me a way of having a strong kind of coherency in chaos where I could be solid in chaos. I could be present in chaos, which now helps me when I'm going into the field with cops or firefighters. Like, hey, be stable in this circumstance. It might be scary and there might be a lot going on, but I can hold myself together. I can stay focused. It also helps me help clients on psychedelic states navigate their messiness of their lives or mind or the psychedelic state. I know what
Mm.
they're going through and I can help them navigate it because I have a lot of training in that myself. Very interesting. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. So, at what stage then in life did you stop using psychedelics yourself and realize that you either no longer needed them or that you needed to find a different way and that was not the tool for you?
Well, I had done psychedelics roughly between 15 and maybe 23 or
Mm,
24.
okay.
I moved into a Zen temple and Was doing a lot of deep meditation work for a few years prior to moving into a Zen temple. And they don't allow you to use drugs. And so I didn't, of course, use. And from about 24 to 32, I stopped using because I was very dedicated to my Buddhist practice. I became a monk in Thailand for a short period of time. I was teaching yoga. I was really relying on the Dharma as the Dharma is the Buddhist teachings and the Buddhist way of life, and the yogic way of being includes healthfulness, eating right, exercising, daily breathing. And I didn't have need or room for any substances in my life. But then sometime during graduate school and after, I started experimenting again in a whole new way, and not in a way that was escaping or not in a way that was even experimenting, but to see if I can deepen my relationship to the greater universe around me. It was very specific to like expanding my experience of this great mystery of life. And I
And
was
what did you find?
that it's expansive and infinite in all directions, that we'll never know the complete picture, but we can pick up pieces. And each piece helps us understand ourselves better, others better, and the greater world we're living in. I discovered, at least for me, that the foundation or the fabric of life is unconditional love and peace. And I can feel that even in my pain. I can touch that even while I was getting divorced. I could touch it in hard moments, that I could still feel the palpable sense of peace or love that seems to underlie life, even at its most difficult moments. I experienced all that. But then I don't want to use drugs to get there. So now that I touch that, I could leave the drug alone and practice that on a daily basis. How can I touch that unconditional love here and around me without needing anything? Because it's already there.
And so your vehicle to get to that place today is meditation and Buddhist practices?
Partially,
Or is
yes.
there?
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's there all the time. You have to remember to touch it. Slowing down. Slowing myself down gets me to touch it. Simply reminding myself, Mike, be slow, be still. Yes, I formally practice meditation, but I remind myself more often than not, Mike, slow down.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden, bird songs, the sound of wind, my dog coming next to me, it's like, oh, here it is. Here's the thing I've been searching for. It's like life at its most simple uh, expression. That's all I want.
Yeah, that's remarkable. I find that I try to get out in nature, just walking outside as often as possible. Matter of fact, before we started recording today, I was outside walking, and sometimes it's walking my dog, sometimes it's just going up the driveway and just looking at the trees, just paying attention to the sounds, the air, the smells, those sorts of things, because it does ground me. I mean, I truly do feel like my sensory perception is opened up. I don't know another way to explain it or to articulate it, but it puts me in a very different place. So when I'm coming to have a conversation like this, I feel like my breathing is slower. I'm not as excitable, and I'm excited for the conversation, but I'm not amped up like I would be on a caffeinated drink or something along those lines. Is that making sense at all?
100, absolutely. We're speaking the same language, and I use I use nature, or not use. I rely on nature. I have a relationship with nature just as you do. I have a beautiful garden that I spend a lot of time in and just even looking at. And I live in a mountainous state, so I spend a lot of
Mm.
time in mountains and rivers. And I encourage all my clients, especially in crisis, go for a walk. How do I get out of this? I got to solve my problem. You're actually the problem right now. Like, yes, your life circumstance is not preferable, and it is an issue to solve. but the way you're showing up to solve it is a problem. The way your mind is racing, the way you're coming out of fear. Go into nature, go for a walk, put your feet in the ground if you need to, do some slow breathing, and you'll start having clarity. Your mind will literally it's going to the prefrontal where your insights and judgment and problem solving skills are now accessible, because when we're freaking out, we're in that kind of I can't think straight, mode. And
Right.
grounding puts us in a place of, okay, all right, now I can start thinking, I can start feeling my body, my emotions, I have more access to other information. So that's what I do most often for myself, and that's what I encourage most of the people I work with to do.
I love that. That's beautiful. So I did want to ask you one other thing before I continue on a train of thought that I had here, and going back to what you had shared about your grandparents. So did you grow up in the Jewish faith?
Yes and no. Yes,
Okay.
I went, did all the things, but I felt so disconnected and dislocated. It wasn't right for me.
Mm,
I didn't feel connected to the teachings. I
okay.
found Buddhism at 18, so very, it's relatively young. I
Yeah.
found Buddhism at 18, and I just did not connect with Judaism before that, and possibly partly due to the kind of morbid nature of my family's relationship to life, because coming out of the Holocaust thank God we made it, and it puts a fabric of doom on everything, of course, a fabric of terror that you see life through. And I know I grew up feeling that terror and doom, and it was paired with Judaism. So to me, Judaism and terror were paired together.
Mm,
Judaism and oppression are paired together. I couldn't really feel the purity of it because it was so tainted by all the things I'm sharing. So I stepped away very early from that and found Buddhism spoke to my experience of myself and life and the universe much more cleanly.
that's so interesting. I found Buddhism in my 30s and studied for a few years, and still there's certainly Buddhist practices that I incorporate in my daily life, from meditation and the way that I show up to my life and my lifestyle and so forth. But it really, the thing that attracted me most, and I was looking into Taoism and
Mhm.
Buddhism, but it was really about the connection to self, the connection to nature, the realizing that my thoughts are things, but they if I'm paying attention to them, I don't have to attach myself to those thoughts.
Mhm.
And some of the concepts were, quite frankly, challenging for
Yeah.
me to try to grasp, but it really did drastically change my life to the good, to a
Mhm.
positive side. So you mentioned something that I want to stay on that I think is very important, and I want to expand on this a bit. You mentioned that the psychedelic side of the work that you do is not for everyone.
Mhm.
So I wanted to find out what is the process to decide whether someone is a candidate for psychedelics
Mhm.
versus someone who would not be ideally suited? What is the difference, and how is that decision made?
Well, as I wrote in my book, and as I wrote in my book, and also what we spend a lot of time at the clinic that I work at, it's a ketamine clinic,
Mhm.
doing an intake, a thorough medical and psychiatric or psychological intake. Does the person have any medical diseases, disorders that the medicine won't work well with or is contraindicated? Do they have any psychiatric or psychological issues where the medicine's going to be a detriment, not a help? And anyone who comes on my retreats, they go through screening. I have a psychiatric nurse who's trained in psychedelic science, and she does a very thorough screening with every single person. Are you psychologically able to be destabilized? Are you psychologically ready to surrender to whatever the medicine's going to ask of you? Do you have any psychiatric conditions like schizophrenia or thought disorders? Or are you in active mania right now? Are you actively suicidal? These are some conditions we wouldn't want to put a person on psychedelic medication. Psychedelic medications destabilize us. To give us new views of the world, you have to unhinge and unhook from the way you are attached to the way you think. I'll say that again. It's interesting. It's not just the way you think we're detaching from. It's your attachment to the way you think. I am attached to how I think. I believe what I believe. And that
So,
gets shaked up.
so
Yeah.
all of that you just described, that melts away in a session, let's say, when you're on a ketamine as an example. So is there a way you can describe
Yeah.
for us what that feeling is like, or what you're witnessing when you're with a patient in a session of this nature?
Yeah, so all of the psychedelics interact with our brain in a variety of ways. Neurochemically, it impacts the systems and how systems are operating in your brain. It impacts what we call the default mode network, which is our normal narrative, the way we experience ourselves or think about ourselves or think about the world it's in default. It's a default. We go to the way we think. And there's actually, it's not chaotic. Yes, we can be chaotic in our minds, but there's kind of like a homeostasis going on, a baseline that's our default. These drugs, these substances disrupt that. So you start thinking of yourself differently. You start perceiving things differently. You even question your own beliefs. Why do I even think that? At high levels of any substance, you might dissociate. You might pull out of your own body experience. You might not even know you're human. You might not know that you are you. And that could be very scary for people who have been through trauma and are doing everything they can to stay like coherent and have control over their life or themselves, because trauma is scary. And the way to, work with fear is like, I'm going to control you, I'm going to control me. And being on a psychedelic, for the most part, you lose control. You have that kind of stripped from you in some ways, depending on the dose and the medicine. So preparing someone for that is very important. We want to make sure we're doing our intakes and going, hey, are you ready for this? Is your body okay to metabolize this? Do you have any diseases, disorders that we shouldn't be taking this? But are you ready to kind of dissolve who you think you are in order to see more of who you are? And that's very scary for a lot of people. So prep work becomes essential. That all can happen while you're on the medicine. You can become destabilized. You can, in a way that serves you, but it could also be scary.
So during the session, so if ketamine is being used or administered, how long does the drug stay in your system? And is it only done at your clinic, or is this something where someone would be sent home? I mean, I would think not, but
Well, that's a huge issue in the field. People are being sent home with ketamine, and it can be very addicting. Ketamine at home use or recreational use can be highly addictive. Ketamine regulated and used in a clinic has very little data on any addictive properties. So we see very low addiction when used clinically. We can see more addiction when it's just on your own, recreationally, or you're sent home with ketamine. My clinic and me personally, we do not believe in home use because of that reason. and because you're not being monitored. So at our clinic, we have an amazing staff who were checking blood pressure. Not everyone gets psychotherapy while they're on ketamine. Some people elect to go to the clinic and just do ketamine on their own. They either have an infusion through an IV or they get a shot, an IM, intramuscular. Some people can get lozenges under their tongue, but they're monitored by really caring staff. The staff come in and check, how are you doing? Do you need support? Do you need help? If I'm there, we're doing deep psychotherapy while the person's on medicine. I'm also watching blood pressure. If it gets too high, I call a nurse in. So that's very safe when done well. So anyone listening, considering, why would I want to do ketamine? Well, my book explores why you might want to do it, because there is high potential for healing old wounds. There's high potential for speaking your truth. Ketamine somehow gives us a sense of deep peace while we can work on deep issues. It also can give us a lot of insight into who we are and why we are who we are. But it's really important to have caring, knowledgeable staff with you while you're going to do this experience, because you are kind of vulnerable and you can feel on your own. So that's my pitch for doing ketamine at a clinic with really solid practitioners is a great way to go.
So when you said that the psychotherapy piece is not always part of the protocol, that there are some people that would come into the clinic and just have the ketamine treatment, but if someone is coming to you because they are just stuck, they have trauma, unresolved trauma, it would I'm trying to think of the best way to ask this. Would psychotherapy, if I came to you and I said I have all the these issues, these unresolved issues I'm trying to work through, and I don't know how to do it, I'm just stuck. Would you, obviously there would be an intake, but would psychotherapy become part of the protocol first?
Yes.
Okay.
We do at least 2 or 3, not a lot of it. We do
Okay.
2 or 3 sessions together, and I would go straight to the wounds, to what is happening for you, what you see, how does your stuckness play out in your life? Where are you limited? Where are you limiting yourself? But really, I would trace it to where were you hurt first, and where did all that start? Pretty quickly.
Okay.
We'd spend a few sessions touching on that, and I would also be giving you ways of being kind to yourself, loving to yourself, compassionate to yourself. And then we would prep you for the psychedelic experience. Hey, you could experience this. You might encounter these things. Here's how I'd like you to go into it, curious and open. Can you trust? Can you surrender a little bit? We would spend a whole session prepping you for that. And then we might do 3 to 6 ketamine sessions together.
Okay.
While
And
you're
how
in it.
long
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
how long does the ketamine stay in your system?
Well, if it's an infusion, we'd have you on a 45-minute drip, and you'll have roughly 25 minutes, 30 minutes of a psychedelic experience or a ketamine experience.
Okay.
If you're on a intramuscular, it could be a 20-minute experience, but in total, it's around an hour of interaction with me and the medicine. And then you're groggy for a few hours. You're not driving, you're not working, you're not really watching TV, you're resting because you had an anesthetic in you and you're kind of out of it. You don't go back to work, you don't really talk a lot. But the session with me generally lasts about an hour to an hour and a half.
So for first responders who are clients of yours, for those who they have randomized drug tests, that are called by their employers, how does this type of treatment, how would that show up, or
it could.
How does that?
Yeah, they're getting prescribed. It's actually, you have to be prescribed ketamine to use ketamine.
Okay.
And they're legally allowed to use it for this reason. It is off label,
Okay.
It's meant to be used in surgery or in ERs, but we're using it because it apparently has high efficacy for treating treatment-resistant depression. There's really good data on ketamine for even PTSD now. And so we're using it off label, but it is legal when it's prescribed. So no department could. Now, that being said, can they still be impaired the next day? Not technically, but would you want them to go into a shift the next day after a ketamine session? Could it be impairing the following day? Do you want them back on a fire truck or in a cop car? These are ethical questions, not perhaps legal ones, because you're allowed to take the medicine, you're prescribed it. You're not high at all the next day, but could you be tired? Could you be a little drowsy? Of course, possibly. So
Hmm.
we and my clients talk about that and go, what's your shift? You're not doing it the day before. I don't want you to do it right after you get off shift too. And so we plan. We're thoughtful about these things. They are allowed to do it. Now, other medicines that are illegal, I'm not going to suggest to an officer, hey, you should be doing some LSD or Molly right now because I respect their position. But does it mean they don't find their own retreats for first responders in Mexico? That's on them to do, that's their choice if they're choosing to do something like that. But
Yeah, this
I'm not going to administer that to someone who's sworn.
makes perfect sense. This is truly fascinating to me, and I know our audience is getting so much out of this as well. It brings up so many other questions that I'd love to explore with you. The one of the things that as I was doing my due diligence, and one of the things that you had mentioned toward the beginning, the work with first responders, you're actually riding with them. You're in the emergency vehicles. You're traveling with these first responders. Why? Why are you actually
Yeah.
in the face of these individuals in the line of their work?
A variety of reasons. Personally love the edge. I want
Okay.
to tell you personally, the edge of life and death is the most sacred place we exist. No monastery I've lived in, no yoga studio could ever touch the sacredness of being at the edge where life and death meet and watching these incredible men and women show up for our behalf, show up to a domestic violence call and protecting a child right there, extracting someone from a car accident or pulling someone out of a house. So for me, it's an honor and a blessing to be at that edge, watching men and women sacrifice their own well-being for the community's sake.
Hmm.
That's personal. As a psychologist, a police psychologist and a fire psychologist, I know the impact of trauma, and I can be there to help mitigate their trauma on the ride home. I'm obviously not showing up extracting people. I'm not putting hands on people during calls with police. That's out of my realm. But I am there witnessing. I can provide support to any standbys for any crisis they're having. If there's a person watching an accident, I'm licensed in my state. I can go up and provide crisis care to someone watching a trauma. But more importantly for me is I can talk with the cop or the firefighters on the way back and at the station or in the car about what they've experienced and how to mitigate a trauma and turn it just into a tragedy, but not have to be traumatic for them. That's one of the things I'm doing as we're riding back.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the three simple truths.
That's fun. So, for everyone listening, the beginning of my book, I write these three simple truths that I believe if we all just practiced, you wouldn't need psychedelic therapy, or you wouldn't need, therapy is good to have. We need people who are helpful to us in our life, but not all of us need to do psychedelic therapy. It's very deep and not always needed. But I believe in three things: that a life of authenticity is possible, and that we thrive We can thrive when we're truly supporting ourselves and seeing ourselves and living as true to ourselves as we can be. As my clients move away from trauma and more toward empowerment and confidence and more toward being in themselves, I see depression go down, PTSD symptoms go down, anxiety go down, because they're like empowered to be authentic. I see authenticity as a medicine. That's one truth. Another truth is that our bodies matter and that our body needs one to be taken care of. It houses our consciousness. If we take poor care of our body, our mind will be unclear and unclean too. But that more than anything, our body has wisdom in it. And when we listen to our bodies, when we really actually listen, we might find an answer to difficult questions. Your body might be saying, no, I don't want this person in my life. No, I don't like doing this. Or yes, this feels amazing. I'm expansive. I'm light. I'm strong. No, this feels terrible. I'm contracted. I'm heavy. You know, that's information. So many of us are trying to make decisions with our ping-ponging mind, and we're missing this incredible, vast, wise system of our body. So that's a truth.
Okay, so that's the second truth.
That's technically the third. Do you remember the first one? Do you? Oh, you have.
So
it,
I
right?
have, yeah. So I wrote down accepting and loving yourself
That's the first truth. I wanted to know if you had it.
unconditionally.
Unconditionally.
Okay. So
That's the first truth.
yeah. So if we practice these simple truths, and you call them simple truths, and simple is not always easy.
No, they're not.
But for someone who I, let's just say, has been living a conventional type life, and this may be very new to them, right? We're exposing them through our conversation to something that is very different than what they're used to. What is a really good starting point for someone just to get introduced to the three simple truths? Start there, but what's a good action step for them to really get moving? Because I believe once you get started, momentum can build, and once your eyes start to open up, it creates a ripple effect.
Do you like yourself? I'm not asking you, but you can answer this. I'm asking the audience. Do you like yourself?
That's a deep question.
It is. Do you know why it's so deep? Because every behavior we do comes out of that answer. The things we're choosing. I know it's deep. It's a tingly kind of question.
Yeah.
Do you like yourself? Do you love yourself? When it's no, we're going to choose things that are punishing, shameful, that increase our shame, that increase our dislike. We're going to end up not taking as good of care of ourselves. When we say, yes, I do, and I do love myself, you're more likely naturally to make better decisions for yourself, to take care of your body, your mind, and your heart. Let's start there.
That's a great starting point. If I said to you that if you asked me that question and my response back to you was, sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't.
Yeah,
there are things that when I reflect on how I either responded to a situation or something triggered me, in that moment, I don't like myself because I feel like I have learned enough to be a better person than I am in that moment. And then I go down that path of beating myself up. But I will say this, and I just want to bring this up, that even though I do that, I have a little more self-awareness today. So I recognize it. It still happens, but I recognize it before I go down a rabbit hole. and I break the pattern and change the language that I'm using, or perhaps my physicality. There's something that or going outside, right? There's things that I'm going to do, but that's a deep question to ask. And I would encourage, and I appreciate you so much for bringing that one up, because I would encourage everyone that's watching and listening right now to answer that question for yourself.
I thank you so much for going there with me. My inner teacher wants to give feedback on something you said for the listeners and for you. Are you
Sure.
open?
Always.
Can we not like something we did, but still love and like ourselves? So there's a fundamental difference, because I too have a ton of shame, and I have had to work through really not liking myself because of the things I've done that have caused harm to me and other people.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've come to, that is independent. Loving myself unconditionally is independent of not liking my behavior. I still do things I don't like that I do, but I am unconditionally loving of myself even though I'm doing those things. I still now fundamentally like who I am, even when I don't like what I've done.
That to me makes perfect sense, and I'm going to apply that for a moment to my marriage as an example. Excuse me. So I unconditionally love my wife. There are certainly things that she does that I don't necessarily like, but it doesn't change the fact that I unconditionally love her. And I love our marriage and our togetherness. And it at least allows for the opportunity to have a conversation about it, to explore it, to try to understand within myself, why does that thing, whatever it happens to be, why don't I like it? Why does it bother me? And try to explore that a bit more deeply. Because typically I find it's a reflection of me versus the thing that she's doing, which bothers me. It's triggering me for some reason, but that's something within me.
That's right. And so for me, looking at how we treat ourselves, the fundamental question becomes, can we learn to love ourselves and accept ourselves unconditionally, even while we make mistakes and we're fallible? Because if you don't like yourself, you end up punishing yourself for those behaviors. If you do like yourself, you end up encouraging and supporting yourself to do better. And those are fundamentally different ways of showing up to yourself.
That's so good. That is so good. This is a conversation that I can tell you right now I'm going to be going back to and re-listening to many aspects of this conversation, because it has been incredibly insightful, eye-opening for me. And I just know that our audience I know they're excited about this one as well.
I'd hope so. Thank you so much. Any help I can give, and I'm also doing the same work. So I'm not anywhere above it. I'm doing the same work. All of
I
it.
so very much appreciate that. And it goes to the saying that we're always, all of us, we're a work in progress.
Yes. Totally.
And keep doing the work, though, because it is very difficult work to do, but it is also incredibly meaningful work to do. So as we are wrapping up our conversation today, Michael, is there a question that you would have liked to have been asked during our conversation that we didn't address, or something specifically that I didn't ask that you think is important to bring up right now?
Oh, I don't think so. To be honest, I was open to the flow, and I don't think we missed anything. There's all kinds of things we can talk about.
So let me ask you this then. I have one question that I would love to find out the response from you, and it's this: what is the greatest gift that life has given you that you didn't realize at the time, but you have found later what that gift truly is?
It's a terrible circumstance that I wish I didn't have to go through in my life.
Okay.
Making a mistake, making some mistakes, breaking some integrity, not living up to my own ethics, getting called out for it, losing relationships because of it, and then getting the opportunity to look at myself very clearly and closely over the years that followed and grow in ways I never would have chosen to grow. I would have kept myself doing old things and heal things that caused those behaviors in the first place.
You live
Sucks.
your truth.
It sucked. And I'm so grateful for it at the same time.
Are you proud of yourself?
Uh, I don't know. I think, I don't know. I don't know if that falls in here. I'm grateful. I like who I am.
Mm.
I love this wild, crazy character that I am and how he lives on the edge, how he tries things and he get in trouble trying things and then own it. I don't know. I think I'll just leave it at that.
That's fair enough. Michael, I want to thank you so very much for joining me today on Business Minds Coffee Chat. What an incredible conversation. Thank you for pulling back the curtain a bit and exposing your heart, your wisdom, parts of your journey and your story, being vulnerable. And I'm just so grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's difficult to be this vulnerable, but it's worthwhile in the end. And I appreciated having space to do this. And I hope you enjoy the book, and I hope whoever's listening enjoys it too. That's my gift to the world. So
Most definitely. Most definitely. And for all of you, I want to thank you so very much for watching and for listening. And I do have a quick favor. Would you please take just a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts? That helps us expand our reach and attract incredible guests just like Michael. And to listen to more episodes, all you need to do is visit jscherbusinessconsulting.com, click that podcast button. And my friends, until next time, keep learning, keep growing. Make sure you run to pick up a copy of Truth Medicine and make sure you read it, absorb it, and apply the lessons you learn. And we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care, everybody.